but what I'll be reading from is a summary of the study, which was released by Duke University. Latinos bring negative stereotypes about Black Americans to the U.S. when they immigrate and identify more with whites than blacks, according to a study of the changing political dynamics in the South. A little over 20 years ago, Dr. Claude Anderson delivered one of his most iconic speeches called Powernomics, A Vision Beyond the Dream. In that speech, one of the key standout points was when Dr. Anderson laid out the potential future devastating effects that immigration, illegal and legal, would have on Black America politically if allowed to go unchecked.
The second thing is that you're going to have an unending influx of immigrants into the country. And that's what Dr. Price is talking about. And nobody, no black politician, no black organization wants to deal with that issue. They will avoid it at all costs, even though in their hearts they know that's one of the biggest problems for black folk. We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4. And the worst part about it is as you descend and go down to number 4, those other groups are going to go up. And as they go past you, you're going to have major racial clashes in this country. You're going to have fights all over this country between blacks and Hispanics, blacks and Asians, blacks and poor whites. And black folk cannot fight all these groups. Everybody can not always be against black folk. They know that we are vulnerable and we are defenseless. And we cannot fight those groups.
Since then, everything Dr. Anderson said has been proven correct. It has recently been estimated that by 2064, only 42 years from now, Black Americans will be 4th on the population list. And by that time, the centuries-long conflict between whites and blacks in America will, on the surface, be deemed irrelevant as the non-Hispanic white population continues to shrink. And with that, a new set of hurdles will have emerged as blacks will now politically have to go through Hispanics as the rising dominant population. This was even acknowledged by Joe Biden in his leaked Zoom call meeting with so-called black civil rights leaders.
By 2040, this country is going to be minority white European. Hear me? Minority white European. And you guys are going to have to start working more with Hispanics, who make up a larger portion of the population than y'all do.
Though not mentioned by Joe Biden, the same can be said for the AAPI community, as they will have surpassed the black population as well. As a matter of fact, the AAPI community is currently the fastest growing community in America, outpacing Hispanics by 11%, according to this article by PBS NewsHour titled, Asian Americans are the fastest growing group in the U.S., report finds. A new report from the Pew Research Center finds Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial or ethnic group in the United States, bringing renewed attention to the growing economic and political power of Asian communities. Between 2000 and 2019, the Asian population grew 81% compared to the 70% growth among Hispanic Americans, 61% growth among Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, and 20% growth among Black Americans. The white population only grew about 1% in that time period. Now, over the past 3 years, we've been able to get a little glimpse of what may be lying ahead of Black Americans on the political front as the political trajectory of migrants continue to rise. But before we get into that, what I'd like to do is quickly go over some of the negative effects of illegal immigration on the Black community. And to do that, I'll be playing a clip from the Center of Immigration Studies in which a member of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, Peter Kirsnow, discussed some of his findings concerning this issue.
I had asked the Civil Rights Commission to conduct a hearing on this, and there were at least 3 hearings that we conducted, one of which was designed specifically to determine the effect of illegal immigration on Black workers. We had a panel of experts who testified, and they spanned the ideological spectrum. Regardless of whether or not they disagreed on discrete policy issues, each and every one of them agreed that illegal immigration has a decidedly negative impact on black wage levels and employment levels. If you've got a significant influx of low-wage labor, what does it do? It depresses wage levels, correct? And what we found also was, regardless of the wage levels, illegal immigrants displaced black workers in areas that had traditionally been populated by black workers. And the reason for that is because what you find is black workers, particularly black males, are disproportionately concentrated in the low-wage labor market and are disproportionately likely to have no more than a high school diploma. And the same is true for the cohort of illegal aliens, and they compete with one another in areas such as construction, hospitality, service, and agriculture. This was not a small displacement either. We had one witness who testified that after he had run the numbers, he found that 40% of the decline in labor participation rates among black workers over 3 decades was attributable to competition from illegal immigration. It comes to nearly 1 million fewer jobs for black Americans as a result of the competition from illegal immigrants. And it's not just the employment levels, it's the wage levels also. And I can only give you a few examples, but we had evidence from the Fed in Atlanta, which did a study on this, to show that illegal immigrants depressed wages, the competition from illegal immigrants depressed wages by $960 on average, but in certain sectors, such as the hospitality industry, the depression of wage levels was $1,560. And because black workers were disproportionately concentrated in those areas, they were disproportionately affected.
Now compound this with the findings that were discovered in a 2006 study which found that Latino immigrants come to the United States with negative stereotypes of black Americans. Now the name of the actual study is titled Racial Distancing in a Southern City: Latino Immigrants' Views of Black Americans. This study was published by the University of Chicago and is authored by a range of scholars and academics hailing from Duke University, University of Chicago, University of Connecticut, West Virginia University, St. Augustine College, and the University of North Carolina. Now, if you'd like to read the study, I'll leave the link in the description for you below. But what I'll be reading from is a summary of the study, which was released by Duke University. Latinos bring negative stereotypes about black Americans to the U.S. when they immigrate and identify more with whites than blacks, according to a study of the changing political dynamics in the South. McLean said the findings are significant because the South has the largest population of blacks in the U.S. and has been defined more than other regions along the black-white divide. How Latino immigrants relate to blacks and whites and how those groups relate to Latinos has implications for the social and political dynamic of the region, she said. Given the increasing number of Latino immigrants in the South and the possibility that over time their numbers might rival or even surpass black Americans in the region, if large portions of Latino immigrants maintain negative attitudes of black Americans, where will that leave blacks, the researcher wrote. Will blacks find that they must not only make demands on whites for continued progress, but also mount a fight on another front against Latinos? In an interview, McLean added, "We are actually pretty depressed about a lot of our findings." Now, an example of this study holding true can be seen in the state of Oregon. This article right here is from the Daily Mail, and it's titled, "Mexican American and 2 White Business Owners Sue Oregon for Racial Discrimination After $62 million C-19 Relief Funds Were Set Aside for Black-Owned Businesses and Residents." Now, what I'm going to read off to you right now is very interesting, so listen closely. Supporters of the fund argue that the $62 million accounted for 4.5% of what the state received, which left plenty for non-black residents. Further, other aspects of C-19 related funds were tailored to other racial and ethnic groups, such as a $10 million fund by the state that largely benefits undocumented Latino immigrants, and one created by Portland officials to aid a district for predominantly Asian-owned businesses. A Stanford University study found that the number of black business owners nationwide dropped by 41% from February to April amid the health crisis. The number of business owners among Latinos plunged 32%, Asians 26%, and white 17%. So what does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? Within this article, they're articulating to you that undocumented Latino immigrants received funds for their businesses, as well as Asian-owned businesses received funds that were specifically for them. And clearly, nobody had a problem with this until money was set aside for Black-owned businesses. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants to sue you and keep this money locked up in litigation so that your businesses can fail. I find that very interesting. Now, here's a little glimpse of what we might possibly be able to expect coming from the AAPI community moving forward into the future politically. In Washington state, a group of Chinese immigrants politically organized to successfully reject Referendum 88, which would have reinstated affirmative action. Now, if that's not bad enough, it gets even worse. And I have discussed this in a previous video on how the Proud Boys have received tens of thousands of dollars in donations from the Chinese diaspora. Brothers and sisters, really let this sit on your mind. They're not even in the country yet, and they've already picked their side. All of this, and now non-citizens have the right to vote in local elections in New York, and you better believe non-citizens voting in elections is going to spread all throughout the country. Why do you think there is such a strong push to get rid of voter ID laws now? Believe me when I tell you that the elimination of voter ID laws has nothing to do with Black Americans. Black Americans have absolutely no problem getting IDs or voting. I've already debunked that myth in a previous video. But in the midst of everything that I just laid out to you, what I find very unfortunate is that all of this is going unchecked. Brothers and sisters, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. If these conversations that we have only stay online and never enter into the real world, then we're just wasting our time entertaining ourselves, pretending like we're doing something when we're not. It is critical that we get active in the real world. By no means am I downplaying the necessity of conversation and the sharing of information online. But if that is all we ever do, we're finished. And with all that being said, that does it for today's video. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. All social media links will be pinned in the comment section below. Please make sure you text tdhiphop to number 33222. That's tdhiphop to number 33222. That way you'll get a direct text notification whenever I release a new video, but it also serves as a protection plan for myself in case YouTube ever gives this channel the axe. I'll be able to send you a direct link to where you can find me next. And last but not least, for those of you who have a love and appreciation for the work that I put in on this channel, the number one way you can show your support is through Patreon. For only $3 a month, that will help put me in position to take TD Hip Hop Media off of YouTube. Remember, the goal is not to grow big on YouTube, but to grow independent of YouTube. And for those who have issues with joining Patreon, you could also hit the join button that's next to the subscribe button, and that way you can become an official channel member for as little as $3 a month as well. And lastly, if you have not already, please make sure you join the emailing list. There is no way that I can go independent of YouTube if I cannot take the audience with me. And the link to that will be pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you for your time, and until the next video, peace.